After many middle-of-the-night debates last week to try to hide everything that they were doing from the American public, House Republicans were actually able to ram through their big disastrous bill, and now it's heading over to the Senate in hopes that they will agree so Donald Trump can actually sign it into law. Now, this budget bill, it is an absolute disaster. It is going to add between 3 and 4 trillion to our national debt. It is going to kick 8.6 million people off of their Medicaid. And it's also going to strip hundreds of billions of dollars away from our nutrition assistance program. Also, we can give these giant tax breaks to the wealthiest among us. And because some of these provisions are so extreme, this bill is actually meeting some resistance by Senate Republicans, which means Mike Johnson, the smarmy Speaker of the House himself, is out there making the rounds trying to sell this bill to the American people. So let's go ahead and take a look at how he is trying to do that. And we'll go ahead and start off with this clip when he's kind of responding to the criticism that is actually coming from Republicans in the Senate. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
Senator Rand Paul said the cuts are wimpy and anemic. The math doesn't add up. It will explode the debt. In addition to that political criticism, you've already seen Moody's credit rating
Senator
agency downgrade American credit, and Goldman Sachs says that this bill will not offset the damage from the president's tariffs. Isn't this an economic gamble?
No, it's not an economic gamble. It's a big investment. And look, what this bill is going to do is be jet fuel to the U.S. economy. It's going to foster a pro-growth economy. What do we mean by that? Because we're reducing taxes, we're reducing regulations, we're going to increase and incentivize American manufacturing again. And the effect this will have in the economy is that entrepreneurs and risk takers and job creators will have an easier time in doing that. They will allow for more jobs and more opportunity for more people, and wages will increase. Now, Margaret, this is not a theoretical exercise. We did this already in the first Trump administration.
So, do you notice how we didn't really say a whole lot of anything there? It's just all of these buzzwords that we continue to hear from people in the MAGA movement. It's going to spur growth. It's going to aspire to a pro-growth economy. It's going to bring manufacturing jobs back. We're going to incentivize that, and then wages are going to go higher. Except he's not explaining any of the mechanisms about how any of that is going to actually work. He just wants you to take it on faith that this bill is going to be so explosive in terms of growth in our economy that it's actually just going to pay for itself. But this is the exact argument that they gave us in 2017 when Donald Trump passed his first tax cuts. Now they're trying to extend those tax cuts, and even third-party analysis shows that the people on the lower end of the earning scale, they are going to see a tax increase, while people on the higher part of the scale, they are going to receive most of the benefit from all of these different tax cuts. It is an absolute disaster of a bill. And Mike Johnson he is unable to explain any of the mechanisms that are actually going to help the American people. He just wants you to take it on faith that MAGA, they know what they're doing. That this bill is going to be the bee's knees for the American people. All because Donald Trump wants to ram this thing through, because it's probably the only thing he will be able to get done in his second administration. So let's move on to this clip where he's responding to Goldman Sachs analysis of this bill. And I bet you can probably guess how he is going to try to wiggle out of this one.
In the first administration, there was sequencing. You got tax reform. The Republicans got tax reform through and held off the tariff war. Goldman Sachs says the hit to growth from tariffs will more than offset the boost to growth from the fiscal package. That's Goldman Sachs.
Well, I know. I respect Goldman Sachs, but I think what they're discounting here is the growth that will be spurred on by this legislation, and the fact that the so-called tariff war is beginning to subside already. You've got over 75 countries that are negotiating new, more fair trade agreements for the U.S. right now because of the president's insistence that that be done, and it was decades overdue. That is going to benefit every American. It's going to benefit the consumers.
This guy, he really lives in a fantasy land. To think that the tariff wars are somehow subsiding when Donald Trump over the weekend, this past weekend, was threatening more tariffs against the EU, against Apple and others. Mike Johnson doesn't know what he's talking about. And of course, I respect Goldman Sachs, but they must not be considering all of this growth that this bill is going to make happen from this big, beautiful bill. What, you think Goldman Sachs hasn't seen a bill come out of Congress before? Do you think they really don't take these things into account as one of the biggest financial institutions in our country? You think you guys were the only one to think of the different growth that this might spur on? I mean, give me a break. If they don't like the messenger, they try to discredit the messenger, right? We've seen this all over the place. The Congressional Budget Office came out and said it is going to be devastated in this way and this way and this way. And then you heard Republicans come out and say, well, you can't really trust the CBO because they got it wrong here and here and here, and they didn't account for this and this and this. It's everything that we have come to expect from the Republican Party. They just do not want to confront reality on reality's terms. Instead, they want to live in this fantasy land where, this bill is going to do so many great things, but we can't explain any of the mechanisms of how these great things are going to work. But you guys just need to trust us. I mean, that is really what's going on here. Then she goes over some of the cuts that are actually going to take place because of this bill.
You are eliminating subsidized federal student loans, so the government will no longer cover the interest on debt while borrowers in school. You're eliminating $500 billion in clean energy subsidies, and you're terminating early tax breaks for electric vehicles. Alongside that, you're carrying out about $1 trillion in reductions to Medicaid and food stamps. We looked at your home state, and the projection is that nearly 200,000 Louisianans will lose their Medicaid coverage because of this. How do you defend that to your constituents?
We have not cut Medicaid, and we have not cut SNAP. What we're doing, Margaret, is working on fraud, waste, and abuse. And everyone in Louisiana and around the country understands that that's a responsibility of Congress. Just in Medicaid, for example, you've got 1.4 million illegal aliens receiving those benefits. That is not what Medicaid is intended for. It's intended for vulnerable populations, for young, single, pregnant women and the elderly and the disabled and people who desperately need those resources. Right now, they're being drained by fraud, waste, and abuse. You got about 4.8 million people on Medicaid right now nationwide who are able-bodied workers, young men, for example, who are not working, who are taking advantage of the system. If you are able to work and you refuse to do so, you are defrauding the system. You're cheating the system. And no one in the country believes that that's right. So there's a moral component to what we're doing. And when you make young men work, it's good for them. It's good for their dignity. It's good for their self-worth, and it's good for the community that they live in.
Yeah, guys, there's a moral component to this. We need to tell all of these able-bodied young men, we need to tell them how to live. But we can't conceptualize that people actually might need Medicaid because they don't earn enough money to go out and buy their own health insurance. These people are absolutely disgusting. And if you just take his math at face value, if you really think that there is 1.4 million people who are undocumented immigrants leeching off Medicaid, as he put it, even if that were true, why are you cutting between $700 and $800 billion from Medicaid, which is going to kick 8.6 million people off of the program? Even their own math does not add up. And then he has the gall to come on mainstream media here and lie straight to your face and says, we're not cutting Medicaid and we're not cutting food stamps. We're just going after the waste, fraud, and abuse. Later on in this interview, he addressed that waste, fraud, and abuse figure, and he put it at $11 billion. Except this budget bill is cutting, like I said, between $700 and $800 billion from Medicaid, kicking 8.6 million people off their Medicaid, and it is also cutting between $200 and $300 billion from our nutritional assistance program, or otherwise known as food stamps. These people are lying straight to your face. It is a devastating bill. And one other thing that I want to say that he just mentioned, or they just mentioned here, is that they're also cutting these green subsidies, but most of those jobs are in red states. Most of the people who are on Medicaid are in red states. Most of the people on food assistance are in red states. So these people just got voted into office with Donald Trump, and now they're turning around and going after the programs that their constituents need the most. It is absolutely disgusting. And then he was asked one more time about the constituents in his state that are actually going to be losing their Medicaid because of this bill.
So the 190,000 Louisianas that are projected by KFF as losing their Medicaid, your position is they were just lazy, not working, that they were undocumented? What about them? How do you defend that they will be losing their benefits?
No, what we're talking about, again, is able-bodied workers, many of whom are refusing to work because they're gaming the system. And when we make them work, it'll be better for everybody, a win-win-win for all. By the way, the work requirements, Margaret, is not some onerous, burdensome thing. It's a minimum of 20 hours a week. You could either be working or be in a job program, a job training program, or volunteering in your community. This is not some onerous thing. This is common sense. And when the American people understand what we are doing here, they applaud it. This is a wildly popular thing. But because we have to preserve the programs, what we're doing is strengthening Medicaid and SNAP so that they can exist, so that they'll be there for the people that desperately need it the most, and it's not being taken advantage of. And this is a...
So he was asked about the nearly 200,000 people in Louisiana who are going to lose their Medicaid as a result of this Republican bill, and all he could say was, well, there's all of these people who are just leeching off the system. We're just going to force them to work, and we're going to strengthen the Medicaid system. Who is buying this crap? We already know that 65% of people who receive Medicaid are already working full-time or part-time. We've got a whole bunch of other people on Medicaid who are caregivers for their aging parents, and they need to be at home to take care of them. So we offer that Medicaid to them. We also know that people are in school getting Medicaid while they're being educated. These people continue to say that there's all of these able-bodied people, there's all of these undocumented immigrants on Medicaid, leeching off the system, defrauding the system, except they have not been able to provide any evidence that that is actually the case. Now, of course, we can always point to these one-off, these red herrings of maybe some able-bodied 30-year-old who is just living in his mom's basement. He is on Medicaid. Maybe he should be working. But those are the exception. They are not the rule. And Mike Johnson and the Republicans are trying to convince the American people that the Medicaid system and the food stamp system is just littered with all of these types of people. They are just lying to you. This bill is going to be devastating to not only their constituents, but it's going to be devastating for our economy as a whole, especially when you pair it with Donald Trump's insane tariff war. It's going to be a disaster. And Jim Hines came on directly after Mike Johnson, and I think he summed up what we just heard perfectly.
But Margaret, I got to tell you, it was like listening to 1984 or something, listening to the speaker. You know, anybody can look this up. The American people want basically three things out of their federal budget. Number one, at this point in time when Americans, the wealthiest Americans are doing better than ever before, Americans want the wealthiest of Americans to pay more taxes and to give tax relief to the middle class and below. Number two, they want us to address the deficit, which is now spiraling out of control to the point where we got a downgrade in one of the U.S. credit ratings. And third, they want a simpler tax code. This bill fails spectacularly on all three counts. They're cutting Medicaid and nutritional assistance, food stamps, to tens of millions of Americans in order to preserve tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans. They're adding $3 trillion to the deficit with this bill. And lastly, they're gumming up the tax code with you don't have to pay taxes on tips. Now, what about the folks who don't earn tips? They're, auto lending. I mean, again, on the three things that Americans care most about, that they want the Congress to do, this bill fails spectacularly. Look, and that's going to show up in the polling pretty soon as Americans come to realize what it is that the House of Representatives just did.
Yeah, so at the beginning there, you heard him say it was just like 1984 listening to Mike Johnson there, because that's exactly what is going on. They are cutting between $700 and $800 billion from Medicaid, kicking millions of people off their Medicaid. They're cutting $200 to $300 billion in food stamps, kicking millions of people off their food stamps. And then he comes on to mainstream media, Face the Nation here, and he says, we're not cutting Medicaid. We're not cutting food stamps. This bill is going to make the economy grow. It's going to pay for itself. Our economy is going to experience this huge growth era, and it's going to be great. They are just not contending with reality on reality's terms. Now, does the CBO get everything 100% correct? Does Goldman Sachs get everything 100% correct when we're trying to evaluate what these bills are actually going to do our economy? No. But the general ballpark is there. Everybody, there's pretty much a wide consensus at this point that this bill is going to be devastating for the United States. It's going to kick millions of people off of their health care and their food stamps, people who need it most. Also, we can, what? Give giant tax breaks to the wealthiest among us. We are literally robbing the poor to feed the rich. I mean, it's about that analogous at this point. And Republicans are on mainstream media lying straight to your face to try to get you to buy into their disastrous ideas. So, I will leave it there for now, guys. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that adequately pushes back against the right-wing media ecosystem that just launders this kind of shit for Trump and the Republicans day in and day out. So if you do like what I do here, please do remember to smash that subscribe button. It is free. And if you guys want to see Donald Trump having probably the biggest meltdown of his life since he has been sworn in as the 47th president, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.